So there's a question about aquariums at home. How many of us have aquariums that with fish in it? Or they also ask how, or do you guys bring work home? What is work from home? What was it like for you guys?
I don't have an aquarium, but fish are all my parents allowed me to have growing up.
So not at the moment,
I
but
used to have fish, but it was never a big aquarium setup. And then the second question was working from home. My stuff was pretty easy, pretty transferable, because right now all my stuff pertaining to my thesis is seafloor mapping, so a lot of GIS and 3D modeling is all on a computer anyway. And I guess everybody else was out with the ship, so
yeah,
the
if
ship
you're on the
is their
ship, you
home.
are home. You guys had crazy quarantine protocols you had to follow too, so everything became longer.
Yep. Obviously this job, you can't really do it from home. Well, I imagine it wouldn't be possible with the satellite and other technologies we have available, but I think it'd be a little risky.
I don't know how the satellite would put oil in the comp. I'd like to see that.
The way that COVID affected the work for most of us, it just meant that because of the protocols and the hoops that need to be jumped through, an outfit that would normally bring in people on a 4 to 6 week rotation, they didn't want to swap out crews because of all the hassles involved. So instead of having a 4-week job, you have an 8 or a 10-week job plus 2 weeks quarantine on one end and 2 weeks on the back end. Suddenly you've got like you're looking at a 14-week pull. It's a little bit much. And the flight restrictions, I went to Japan April 1st. April Fool's Day should have been a clue, but I was there 3 days into a 6-week job and Air Canada canceled my return flight. Couldn't get home. So
The Nautilus didn't come pick you up?
wasn't a Nautilus job.
Yeah, I was gone for 3 months straight because of quarantining and having to stay on boats. And going with the timing you get from one boat to the other, you just are going straight into another quarantine and then the other boat. So I was probably gone for a total of 4 or 5 months, but 3 months at a time was the longest.
That's a bit much.
Yeah.
I left home this year on June 7th. What day is it now?
Yeah, that's only like a couple days sooner than last year. Wasn't it, Dan? We drove down.
Yeah.
Was it June or July, though?
July.
July.
Yeah, we all decided that would be great to drive from basically
Washington
Seattle
through Oregon down to
Los Angeles.
It's a nice drive if you have the time to go along the coast, stop and smell the roses, but if you're just doing the I-5, it's like...
Yeah, we had to just drive straight down. We didn't want to fly.
The worst, or I suppose the best, depending on whether you're my accountant or my wife, but the worst year I have had since I started doing this, I was home for 5 weeks in a year. I had 47 weeks work.
Wow.
Wasn't all offshore.
That was 2020?
All away from home. No, it's going back quite a few years now.
I mean, I think the craziest thing for me was having to drive up from Seattle to BC during COVID times when the border was closed, it was like a ghost town. I was the only car there having to cross over. But like the people were super excited, like, oh, someone to talk to. Yes. All right, I'm going to breakfast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're right at that shift change time, so.
What do you think about your position under the ship?
We're going to have to do something about that for recovery. I was thinking when Greg comes up to relieve me, he'll have to deal with it. I just stopped lateraling, so we'll see what that does. That's probably going to significantly slow my ascent rate there. I was up to 25 with that. With the lateral going on there.
We've got someone asking if we're in a colossal squid habitat range.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of them this year. Several years ago, we were up here when the Humboldt squid were just everywhere. There was like swarms of them. They were huge. But I haven't seen a lot in the last couple of years like we did. There was 1 or 2 particular years there. They were all over. They were even in the news. They were attacking divers and removing their masks.
They're pretty aggressive too, right?
Yeah.
I remember watching them from the ship, eating everything in sight. Not from the ship, from the ROV, I mean.
The best was they like the lasers, the green lasers, so like a cat with a cat toy. And they would actually wait till like the laser was on a rock or something, and they would pounce and pick up the rock and throw it. Really funny.
Videos on comms.
Good morning, Ed.
Good morning. How you guys doing? Long way up, eh?
Almost there.
Good morning. How was breakfast?
Delicious, as it always is. The little pastries this morning are the caramel ones.
Ooh.
So if you're a fan of caramel, sugar highs, it's your kind of breakfast.
Sugar comas?
Yeah. I always like breakfast on a boat. I don't know why. Used to work on a vessel at a place on an American observatory just south of here. And the vessel was frequently pointed north into the prevailing winds. And so in the morning, we would go out to this one part of the vessel and look to the east and watch the sunrise. And it was right by the vents for the galley. So we called them bacon sunrises because you could smell the bacon cooking. It's quite nice. And interestingly enough, that observatory and this observatory are siblings, spawned from a shared idea between an American researcher and the Canadian team up here. Canada was able to get their observatory built, funded in the water first, but both of them taking advantage of the fact that the Plate of Juan de Fuca has so much of what we find in the global ocean available very close to shore.
See you, Kim.
Is that American Observatory still running then, Ed?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
Yep, just talked to the PIs shortly before I came out here. I think 102 active instruments, subduction zone, all the way out to the spreading center.
Mm-hmm.
Our spreading center here, we have the Endeavour hydrothermal vent field. And at theirs, they have a volcano called Axial Seamount that rises about 1,000 meters from the seafloor and was erupting about every 2 years. Now it looks like it's back down to a decadal cycle.
Oh, okay.
But there's sacrificial instruments and instrument platforms, which they call secondary nodes, inside the caldera.
Oh.
And they've been measuring the rise of the caldera over time. So unlike, they did a little different than the Canadian Observatory in that they didn't run, the Canadian Observatory comes from Port Alberti. Is that what it's called?
Port Alberni, yeah.
Alberni, thank you. Out, and it makes a loop and returns to Port Alberni, the thinking being that if the cable were severed or failed somewhere, they could still get to the rest of the network through that loop. Whereas the American Observatory, perhaps based on the experience with the Ocean Networks Canada, not having suffered a failure like that, just does kind of straight out with branches going off of it, like almost like an arterial.
How you feeling this morning, Ed? You recovered from a fantastic birthday?
Yeah, birthday was fantastic. But today is the finale of the birthday week.
Yeah.
Our 5 birthdays in a row, and we're wrapping up later today with Kylie, our ROV pilot, who has a milestone birthday today. Mine was just another, made it around the sun one more time, but this is a big one for her, so
yeah, we're excited
to be out here with her.
We will be celebrating again tonight. Well, all day technically, but
yeah,
definitely tonight.
Well, technically at noon when she wakes up, I think.
Yeah, I tried to hunt her down at midnight, but she had already racked out. So.
Well, good. Getting an early birthday sleep.
Yeah. It is, you know, those are things we all enjoy celebrating with friends and family, and it can be a little difficult when you're out here. So we try and make it special for people. I certainly felt that yesterday. And it's nice because we're in such close quarters that when it is your birthday, every time you turn a corner, there's another person wishing you happy birthday.
Yeah.
So it's pretty nice. There's 48. And how many persons do we have on board?
46, I believe.
46, yeah.
You can't escape us.
Can't.
And
no escaping.
I think I heard happy birthday yesterday in English, Spanish, Romanian, Polish, Ukrainian. I think that might have been it.
Mm.
That's enough.
Yeah. These sets, I assume that's what they were saying to me. Could have been get out of my way.
Hey, here's an interesting question. I'm interested to know this answer, actually. Has Nautilus ever explored in Arctic region?
Not that I'm aware of. No. We don't have an ice-rated hull.
And we have a lot of really good outdoor space that's really great for warm weather. I don't know how comfortable it would be in cold weather.
Now,
designed with the Mediterranean in mind.
So the ship isn't rated for Arctic?
Not for ice, not for temperature, no.
Would that have an effect on the ROVs as well?
No. It's just the humans trying to operate them. And one of the features of a vessel that typically make it what's called a global class vessel is that the part of the vessel forward where they operate it, the bridge, has what are called wing bridges, which extend to the outside of the vessel. Our wing bridges are not enclosed. So when we come into port and dock, etc., or when we're doing operations, the mates or the captain can stand outside of the bridge and see what's going on. And it's a little bit helpful, actually, because they're exposed to the forces that affect the movement of the boat. They feel the wind. You know, they can see everything. Whereas a vessel that would work in a colder climate referred to as a global class vessel, will have enclosed wing bridges. So they're inside. You also need different levels of thermal protection. There's just a lot.
Well,
And
you need heaters instead of ACs.
Yeah, you would need a lot of heaters.
yeah.
Ways to protect your pipes and liquids. Ways to get ice off of the vessel. And you would need a port from which to work from. You know, with our home port in Los Angeles, it's a long way up there.
Yeah. So then, what level rating would the Nautilus be? If there are levels,
I don't know if there's a term for that.
Now you have your phones, you have your different IPPS.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Nautilus certainly is way more comfortable in tropical climates.
Yeah.
I've worked up where we are right now in this region on a vessel out of Alaska that is ice rated. It's not an ice breaker, but it's got a reinforced hull, so it can come into contact with ice without worrying about the hull being penetrated. And it has all of those things to allow it to work in very cold climate. And it's based at, interestingly enough, operated by the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. And its home port is in Seward, Alaska, at the southern part of the Kenai Peninsula, just south of Anchorage.
The Sikuliak.
Yes, the research vessel Sikuliak. And it deploys and recovers, as many research vessels do. We're an exploration vessel. A very large rosette containing large Niskin bottles, I think 24 or 36 of them, probably 24, that can be lowered to various depths and remotely triggered from the vessel. And that, on a lot of research vessels, that involves, 4 or 5 people outside deploying it and recovering it. On the Sikuliak, they have what's called a Baltic door. The side of the vessel opens up.
Oh.
There's an automated system that deploys it and recovers it, and there's one operator who's inside an enclosed heated space to do all that.
Sounds way nicer.
Yeah. So we are currently ascending after our installation of fetch device number 3. We'll be bringing the ROVs back on board, and I don't know if we've determined what our next location is. Do we know where we're up to next?
The whiteboard is blank in that
It's
department.
blank when I came up.
I think it said recover a fetch.
Yeah, we have to recover the float.
Okay, recover a float.
Oh,
yep. They don't
trigger
make those. Trigger it and recover the float.
Yeah.
They don't make those rosettes as heavy as they should.
No.
Those things kite all over. You have to wrap a ton of lead around them if you're actually going to lower them down at a decent clip.
Although I've seen the cable separate on recovery and had to use the ROV to go get it.
The next dive location should be at the main Endeavour field.
All right.
That's the next plan.
So for our viewers tuning in, we just had a question about that. So yes, I believe Endeavour should be our next dive location. We were originally supposed to be at Endeavour last week, but had to deviate due to some weather conditions.
Yeah, when the wall became the floor, we decided to leave.
Yeah, exactly. So we will definitely be on our way back to Endeavour, and I know we're all excited to head over to Endeavour. It's a lot on the agenda once we get to that location.
It's one of my favorite places to dive.
Yeah. So no Arctic plans in the future, but how about a second Black Sea and Mediterranean expedition?
We're actually headed in the other direction. This vessel is slowly moving its way westward. We're going to winter in the state of Hawaii and use that as our launch point for our field season next year.
So maybe...
As, 2 years ago, we were also operating in the South Pacific with ports of call in, I think, Honolulu, Samoa, both independent and American Samoa.
Pago Pago.
Yeah, Pongo Pongo and Apia. I don't think we had any other ports of call down there.
So
it also involves
the only other one like in the area is Tarawa.
Yeah,
and there's a wonderful book that has kept 2 ships that I know of from going to Tarawa.
how were the Black Sea Mediterranean expeditions when you were on them?
Greg's the expert in that.
They were good. They were very different, especially very different from any ONC work.
Yeah.
We, like this tether is 57 meters. I think our tether there was like 15 to maybe 20 meters.
Oh, really?
Some of our dives were 70 meters deep, you know, not going down too far.
Yeah.
And it was a different focus. We did a bunch of shipwrecks.
Yeah, that was
hunting.
a lot more discovery, right?
And then we started to, they started to build up the science program and create everything from like the Scientists Ashore program, the SCF program, the internship program, just all of this stuff getting built up.
It was a young organization.
So a lot of what we're doing now was developed during the Black Sea and Mediterranean expeditions.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, sure. The seeds were planted
at the same time, right? Yep. The boat has changed a lot since then. It's longer this year compared to last year. It's wider this year compared to the first year I was on it.
I think it's substantially different in layout. I think were the meals downstairs and they cooked upstairs and sent them down?
They cooked downstairs
and sent them up.
The crew had their own lounge.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yep. And that's now the ROV shop. There wasn't a hangar. There was not a social deck. Well, there was a social deck, but it consisted of some plastic chairs, a tarp, and a old wooden cable spool as the
table,
congregating table.
Oh, wow.
I just saw Tim, our data engineer, and I were going through old photos, and old enough that the original name of the vessel was still on the side of it.
I'd like to see some of those.
Yeah, Tim has them. I don't know where he got them from, but they're super interesting.
Mast was there.
But there wasn't a satellite dome.
There was no satellite dome. The satellite dish was a totally different dish.
There were no vans up here. The photos when we got it.
Oh, yeah. Well, the vans that were put up here were the imaging van and the control van from the original flyaway system.
Yep.
And we sacrificed the contents of the satellite van to set up what was known as the sat room at the time, and is now the rack room. They've shifted slightly.
And that's before it was remodeled into what you see today.
Yeah. The gym had a Baltic door, which was really quite nice.
Oh, no way.
So you could stare out at the Mediterranean or Greece or whatever,
so, like super
while you worked out.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you could row and ask them to open the Baltic door.
Oh, that's awesome.
But originally there was a winch there that for doing CTD deployments out the Baltic door.
I'm really interested in how they come up with the designs for doing redoing the ship like that, because that's a lot. That's a lot that's changed then.
Yeah, it's just been incremental.
Right, but I feel like you should introduce people to your background as to your level of interest in that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do have engineering background, and also was a big exhibit fan, so we pimped out the rides.
I love that guy. There was a show on MTV with a rapper named Exhibit, who would fix up kids' cars is the premise of it.
Trick out the cars and add all sorts of different features, with televisions in there.
Stuff.
One guy liked
Centered
popcorn.
around their interest.
One guy liked popcorn. They put like a popcorn machine inside. And like on the seats or something. All sorts
a lot
of
of engineering.
Stuff. But no, on the engineering aspect, I think this is really interesting, especially and it makes sense. You know, as things change, like you said, and we start having different focuses on different expeditions, you need more elements. So obviously, this control van here that you beautifully built, Ed,
big team
is much needed. The extra space on the deck obviously is much needed for all the different equipment that we have now, and for times like this when we're deploying so many
the wet
instruments.
lab has been totally redone.
Yeah.
A couple of times.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was
2 years ago.
They had tile flooring at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's significantly improved.
All of those cabinets that are on the outboard side are all new.
Yep.
So are the locks
the
on them.
The walls, the countertops, there's a whole slew of things. The refrigerators, we didn't have a -80 initially.
No, now we have 2 -20s. Those are pretty new.
Speaking of changes, I heard there were some changes to Mini Hercules. Mini Hercules ROV, is that correct?
Little Herc?
Little Herc.
So Little Herc's still with us. It was loaned out to another organization for a while. 6,000 meter capable observation ROV, so it doesn't have any manipulators or spaces to pick up.
Did they get a new foam pack
samples.
for that? I thought the foam pack was...
No Predator arm on it?
No, it's got no arms. It's about yay tall. It's a meter tall. No, it's bigger than that. Yeah, 4 instead of 6. It's got, there's a mount for the same camera that we have here, although it can be equipped with a 4K camera. But you can really get in tight on things with that ROV.
Yeah, because of the smaller size.
You can get the camera right into the coral.
Yeah, and you can get inside wrecks with that ROV.
Oh, really?
Not like through a portal, but it's easier to
like
get down inside
a deck or something like that.
Yeah.
We actually had a turtle Herc camera, or mini Herc camera incident on the surface. It was right before a really long dive, and it smeared turtle goop all over the surface, or all over the camera lens, and we had to dive with that for the entire dive.
Is Mini Herc going to come along on the Hawaii expedition?
It's under discussion. I'm not sure what's the status of that. I don't know if a decision has been made. It's easy enough to containerize it and ship it.
Chris,
we also have another version of Argus called Atalanta.
Atalanta?
Yep,
oh,
which is a 6,000 meter camera sled.
Is it a miniature size, basically?
No, it's about the same size.
It's miniature.
It's about the same. Yeah.
It's miniature.
It doesn't have the heft, the mass, or the weight.
Does that one associate with Little Herc, or is that?
It can go with either vehicle.
Yeah, it can go with either.
Her Little Herc can go on Argus. You don't want to do Argus and Atalanta together, but we are heavy and heavy.
Yes.
This is a great question, and Greg, since we're talking about these ROVs, if you could design your own ROV, budget notwithstanding, what would it be like? What equipment? What would be your most priorities as far as features and capabilities?
You know, the real question that has to be answered first is what's the purpose? Because there's different purpose means different tooling, different equipment.
And there's sweet spots along that sliding scale of, you know, as you add one thing, you have to add 4 other things, which require a larger foam pack. The design of ROVs reminds me of, if anyone's a parent and they've ever read the book to their kids, if you give a mouse a cookie, it says he's going to ask for a glass of milk. And it's just this progression of things. If you want to be able to pick up more geological samples, you need to have a larger foam. Right.
And if you have bigger boxes, you need a larger foam pack. And if you need a larger foam pack, you need a larger frame. And if you have a larger frame, you need bigger thrusters.
More power. So it just...
So let's say...
It's a very slippery, incremental, if not exponential slope.
So let's say primarily for these missions that we're on this expedition right now, what what features, I guess, aren't on Hercules at the moment that would be more beneficial for this?
It all depends on the long-term needs of the organization. I certainly would advocate that, you know, while a 4,000 meter rated vehicle can get to 60% of the Earth's oceans, if you had a vehicle that was rated to 6,000 meters, you can get to 95% of the sea floor. So that certainly I would think would be a consideration. I'd like to see some, you know, improvements in imaging. But
yeah, I was going to ask you about 4K cameras and stuff, because everything I've seen tested, it just, like with motion, it just smears.
That's because they're currently, let me think about this. Every 4K underwater camera that you can buy currently uses a single sensor, a single chip, so it's not very good at aliasing or anti-aliasing. And they all capture
and aliasing
at 30, how a diagonal line is captured and perceived by the camera.
Okay.
If you have one sensor, you will inevitably get stair-stepping, where to capture those pixels, it looks like stairs when you zoom in and look at the image. Okay. Whereas if you have 3 chips, between the 3 chips, you're able to smoothly capture and present diagonal, non-linear lines, like the slope of a fish's back, for instance. But they also capture at 30 frames per second. And so what happens when your camera platform is in liquid, shooting an object in liquid, nothing is stationary. Everything is moving around. And so these 4K cameras, I think 4 of them, 4 or 5 that we've tested, they all have motion artifacting. And ignoring the fact that every camera that works underwater has to be, you know, for science, has to very carefully handle the air-water interface. Light bends as it goes from water into air, and there's air inside our housings.
Yeah.
So you have to correct for that. You have to do it correctly to eliminate geometric distortions. So if you shoot an image of a grid, the lines don't bow as they get to the outer parts of the frame. So that we know when we present our imagery to the scientific community, that's exactly what that organism looks like.
Yeah.
We also have to correct for geometric distortion, chromatic aberration. I mean, there's a lot of optics that go into it. So I'm just assuming that everybody out there has those optics right, which is a bit of a stretch. With the 30 frames per second, what ends up happening is the image always has a sort of blurry feel to it, even if it's super sharp in focus. And when there's those brief moments where the ROV is actually not moving, so if it's drifting to the lower left, and it stops for a second before it goes back to the upper right. That instant when it stops moving, that half-second, 1 second period, the image just jumps into super sharp, crystal clear 4K image. Okay. And then it goes back to what we technically refer to as blur-o-vision, with everything being smeared as it moves around.
And it makes it seem so much worse because for that moment it was great.
It was crisp, yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to image everything by setting down on the bottom, you could do a lot with the commercially available 4K cameras right now. But even that, you know, they really come in 2 flavors, $15,000 and $30,000. And that's inexpensive for this arena, but they're really for the scientific community. And we have a 4K camera. But the camera that we have right now, which is easily 15-year-old technology, captures 60 interlace fields per second with 3 chips. And
our current camera.
Yeah.
Ikigami, if I remember correctly.
It's a Ikigami camera with a Fujinon. Oh, wait, is it Fujinon? No. Yeah, Ikigami camera with a Fujinon broadcast lens. It's a HDL 45 or 57, depending on whether these have been upgraded or not. And it's a little box camera. It's, you know, just literally a very small box.
And what's the image quality on this one? What does
this is 1920 by 1080, okay. So HD. These are HD cameras. So they have 1/4 the resolution. All cameras really have to decide. It's much like making an ROV. You have a limited amount of data you can move around. These cameras are putting out 1.5 gigabits of data per second. A 4K camera is outputting, depending on how, if it's 30 frames, 6 gigabits per second, or if it's 60 frames, 12 gigabits per second. It's a lot of data. So you have to trade off temporal for spatial resolution. So do you want information more frequently or a bigger raster? And you know, the perfect world is you get both.
Yeah.
4K, which is 1920 and 1080 times 2 to get 4 times larger raster and twice as frequent frames.
Gotcha. Interesting.
There is an entity making some moves in that world, and it'd be interesting to see how that develops over time.
How far away do you think we are from having adequate cameras to be able to put a 4K that has all the benefits that you would need for an underwater expedition?
September.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right around the corner.
I think that if you were just waiting for it to happen on its own, it probably wouldn't happen as quickly. I know Ed's been kind of researching this and putting out feelers for a while.
Yeah, we've had Dave with our firm has been focused on this for about 4 years now. It's very hard because even in the broadcast arena, even the cameras they're using at the Olympics that you see, and everyone's used to seeing those at football games, baseball games, the 4K cameras they have at the Olympics, within 200 meters of that camera, they have to have a piece of electronic that's 4 rack units tall, so about 7 inches tall by 24 inches deep, that just has all the processing equipment to get that raw sensor data and convert it into a usable video signal. And there's no way you could ever put anything like that on an ROV. So the one of the challenges, one
you
of the
want to
many
pick something up?
challenges.
Sorry, we have good images.
Yeah. One of the many challenges was finding a camera that could have that box. They all have that box far enough away. In our case, it's we needed to be able to send the signal 8,000 meters, 8 kilometers. Even if the ROV is working on deck, the signal still goes 8 kilometers because it goes through the entire cable
system.
And that part we think is solved.
Yeah.
So, but we're talking about a camera system that lands right between $300,000 and $400,000, and you might want to have a spare.
Yeah. That'd be an expensive upgrade for sure.
Yeah.
You could start getting you know, you've seen the new camera views that they use for NFL games, basketball games. I think it's like they're really close. Like, I don't know if it's like they're shooting at like a 50, it's a very tight frame, a very shallow depth of field.
Yeah.
It's an awesome view. I love it for the close-ups, you know, when somebody scores or whatnot. You can get a really tight view. Everything's completely blurred background.
But you can also get very small form factor cameras now. We have a lipstick camera above the pilots. We got to come up now. One back there.
Yeah, we're good to come up. Nah, they're in charge. They're in charge now. They're in charge now. What? Looks like it.
Can you recover? Yes, you can continue to recover. Start coming up.
Sure.
Wait, why is Kylie up?
Yep. And so let's see.
Kylie's going to do both poles by herself. Ready for launch recover there, Greg?
Yep. Let's see, let's get your camera tilted up, Markle. Grab it and tilt it up for you. Video, are we full wide on Herc? There we go.
Yeah, of course we are. The deck's getting a little more clear.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten rid of quite a bit.
Still have Wally.
Yeah, I haven't seen what's stenciled on the back of Wally. Has anyone looked?
Where is Wally located?
All the way past Dan there in the corner back by the pulpit.
Oh, okay.
Right there. He's standing right in front of Dan there. He's got the two treads on it like a tank or a tractor. Wally operates a little bit like Herc does in that there's a tether that comes off it and has floats on it. They go up into the water column and then come back down to like a junction point. So it's able to drive around the bottom freely at will.
Oh, nice.
Within a defined area, but it's a pretty large area.
We're going to see him at all during this expedition?
We'll be deploying it, but we'll have to go to oceannetworks.ca when we do to watch the live video. We had a ripping current last night on recovery. Used to be able to see the jet pump. Oh, there it is. A lot better when didn't have the add-on. You can see the add-on.
All right, you can start. Thrusters, everything else. It's up to Ed. Ed,
you can kill it any time.
Kill August cameras?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
If you're just tuning in live, fortunately for you, we are ascended. We're recovering the ROVs right now, getting them back on board, and preparing plans for our next destination. But another successful dive, installing our fetch device here at our current location, and we will be keeping you updated about where we'll be heading to next and when.
Yeah, so that's pretty solid. And most of this for me is hands off, right? It's just once we're at the surface often, like if I don't have good visual and without a light pool and with it being cloudy, it's kind of like the exact heading is kind of hard to see. So I did use auto heading this time, but you know, otherwise.
Yeah.
And I've let myself drift off to the side, but right. The goal is you want to come up directly in center. Once they have straps on Argus, I'm okay with drifting over. If you go over too far, Mark will, yeah. Yeah, and since we have some forward way on the ship, I think there is a current actually going forward too, but it's working out pretty well that I'm just pretty much hands off. The thing that a lot of people forget is that the thrusters still spin, though. Which is how we've gotten the lift line in the thrusters. Daisy chain is free. Right.
Herc, drive out to VND tether.
Yeah, and you can see that the tether is flipped over the recovery line. There's actually two, so it's not a twist. Pretty much I leave on the cameras and sensors that I'd want in case we fell back in the water when the crane goes to pick us up. And it's just like paying attention. So they had gotten most of it, and so then by driving forward and tightening that up again, that caused it to pop. Yeah. And Mark will coach anybody. Like if you're not doing what he wants you to do, he'll tell you exactly what he wants you to do. That's right. It's Kylie's birthday.
Eric, you want to try the lateral to your right? Yeah, keep lateraling a little bit. Okay, that's good. We'll start hauling you up here in a minute. Okay, coming out of the water now. Control van, you copy?
Roger.
You guys still have to do the cabinet?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't get to it in time. So close.
Okay, vehicles on deck, securing now.
Did we turn off deck power? High voltage is off? Yeah. bridge nav, we can hold position here. Which one of these is the